Okay, so in part one of Rime of the Ancient Mariner, it begins with this framing story. So we have an interaction between the ancient mariner who stops a young man who is attending a wedding. He's he's a guest at this wedding, of the wedding party. And the mariner is this old, grizzled man who's wearing these like long robes, and he has a long gray beard. And it almost seems as if there's something supernatural about him. He has this glittering eye, and he has almost an intense way of sort of fixating whoever he's talking to, right? So he can hold their attention, and they have to they're compelled to hear his story. And at first, the young man asks the mariner, he calls him a graybeard loon. He says, "Unhand me." And then almost immediately he sits and listens like a 3-year-old child. So it seems as if the mariner is able to has a sort of power over whoever he's speaking to, and again can command their attention completely. So that's the framing story, is this interaction between the mariner and this young man, and the mariner will go on to tell his tale. And if you're following along with the text, the mariner's tale begins with the ship was cheered, the harbor cleared, merrily did we drop below the kirk, below the hill, below the lighthouse top. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stanzas down from the top. So that's where we get the beginning of the inset narrative, where the mariner will tell this tale of his tragedy at sea and with the events that played out while he was with the ship and all his crew. And then the wedding guest will, all this time, he'll listen to this whole complete tale, and sometimes he'll interject, but mostly he just stays quiet and is sort of transfixed on the mariner as he tells his tale. So the mariner begins his tale about, the ship leaving the harbor, and then the events that played out after. So the mariner describes how the storm came. So further down he says, "And now the storm blast came, and he was tyrannous and strong. He struck with overtaking wings and chased us south along." And then he'll describe how the ship had to sort of move between ferocious natural environments, so like a sort of cold, ice, mist, snow. They were sort of surrounded by ice. So we get some famous lines in this tale. The ice was here, the ice was there, the ice was all around. It cracked and growled and roared and howled like noises in a swound. So we have some nice onomatopoeia there, where cracked and growled, roared and howled. Some personification as well in this section. And then so the ship is sort of stuck in all these sort of snowy, inhabitable environments where there's ice all around them, so they were sort of stuck. And then, luckily, this fortunate event occurred. The Albatross seems to come along, and he brings good fortune with him. So the albatross is a large bird that often is sort of a portent of good luck. And here they describe it. "At length did cross an albatross, through the fog it came, as if it had been a Christian soul, we hailed it in God's name." So they praise the albatross for its appearance. It's a good luck symbol, and they refer to it as a Christian soul. We hailed it in God's name. So there's some sort of religious connotations going on in this narrative as well. And the fact that this bird is sort of representative of a sort of divine force is also kind of an underlying meaning to its presence in the tale. And then immediately after the albatross's appearance, there's good fortune, so the ice splits and they're allowed to go through, so their ship keeps going forward. And there's a good south wind sprung up behind, and then the Albatross follows them along every day, coming to greet them. And it's a good sort of has good charm for this crew of men as they go about their journey. And then part one ends with a sort of shocking act by the mariner. Our final stanza of part one: God save thee, ancient mariner, from the fiends that plague thee thus. Why lookest thou? With my crossbow I shot the albatross. So the ancient mariner shoots the bird for seemingly no reason, right? It's been a good luck charm for the men as they go about their journey. And here he is shooting it for no reason, right? So this will be the event that leads to a chain of events, of unfortunate events that befall the crew of this ship. So in part two, we see some of the aftermath of the mariner's actions of killing the albatross, and it seems as if the bird had brought good luck, and when it dies, it brings a chain of events, of unfortunate events, that again suggest some sense of retribution. So the mariner says, I had killed the bird that made the breeze to blow, and then he is cursed by his men, his crew. They don't understand why he did that. They say, ah, wretch, said they, the bird to slay that made the breeze to blow. So as soon as the bird dies, the breeze seems to stop. Their ship is stagnant in the middle of the ocean, and all their sort of good luck has gone. They're sad and they're sort of stuck, and the sun is starting to beat down on them. So the heat, and then day after day we stuck, nor breath nor motion, as idle as a painted ship upon a painted ocean. So day after day they are stuck, and then the famous line, water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. So they are pretty much dying of thirst at this point. And then there's descriptions of sort of some supernatural events kind of occurring. It seems as if the natural environment is sort of a reflection of all the bad things that are sort of brought upon the ship. So the very deep did rot, slimy things did crawl with legs upon the slimy sea. So the sea itself becomes a reflection of all the bad luck that the men will have. The water, like a witch's oils, burnt green and blue and white. And the spirit plagued us so. So we have the natural world sort of taking revenge on the mariner and all of the men for this act of shooting the albatross. And then as sort of penance, punishment, the crew, young and old, cast evil looks upon the mariner, and instead of the cross, the albatross about my neck was hung. So they hang the albatross around his neck. So the albatross is hung around his neck, so you can see in this illustration it's a bird hanging from his chest. And this is part of his punishment that the men force him to endure as punishment for his sort of spontaneous, selfish act of killing the bird and then bringing upon this bad luck on their ship. And again, there's some religious connotations or religious imagery that's being evoked here. Instead of the cross, the albatross is hung about his neck. So we have some religious imagery in that scene. So in part three, all the men and the mariner are dying of thirst at this point. Their ship is not moving. There's the hot sun beating down on them, but there's no wind, so they're not moving. And then in the west they beheld something in the sky. At first it's just a speck in the distance, a shape moving closer, and then they recognize the sails. It's a ship coming towards them, which is very mysterious since their ship has no breeze to blow it. This ship is sort of coming closer to them, and it's almost ghostly and scary. And so the ship comes closer and closer, and it seems as if it's driven by a sort of supernatural force. And once it gets closer, the mariner notices the people aboard the ship are supernatural. So the crew of this ghost ship are supernatural presences. So our supernatural presence, we have the figure of death, and then we have a woman who is referred to as the nightmare life in death. Her lips were red, her looks were free, her locks were yellow as gold, her skin was as white as leprosy, the nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. So we have two figures, death and life in death, and they're playing a game of dice, and it seems as if they're playing for the life or soul of the mariner. And it turns out that she wins, so life and death wins this game of dice, and what it sort of implies is the fact that the mariner is going to be sort of cursed with a kind of everlasting life in death where he cannot die. He's sort of stuck in limbo or purgatory, and he's not released from his cursed existence. And then following this event, all his crew pass away one by one. So one by one, all his men pass away, and the mariner is left the only one alive. And each man looks at him with his last breath. Each turned his face with a ghastly pang and cursed me with his eye. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. The souls did from their body fly. They fled to bliss or woe, and every soul it passed me by like the whiz of my crossbow. So every soul of his men they either go to heaven or hell or whatever, and then they whiz by him like his crossbow. So it's all the result of this one act that he committed by killing the Albatross, and now he is sort of indirectly responsible for the deaths of all his crew. So part 4 begins with the framing story again, and here we have the young man who the mariner is telling the story to. He's interjecting, and he says, "I fear thee, ancient mariner, I fear thy skinny hand." And then the mariner continues on with his story. When the mariner says, fear not, thou wedding guest, this body drop not down." So he's sort of reassuring him that he's not some zombie or some evil presence. He's a normal man, but he's been cursed with this life in death. So he cannot die no matter what, and he must go on telling his tale. So he goes back and he talks about how all his crew died, and one by one they all cursed him, and he had to look at the curse in each dead man's eyes for 7 days and 7 nights. And he says, "And yet I could not die." So this is his punishment from life and death. So he's sort of stuck in this half-life where he cannot fully die and be released. He must sort of live this punishment day after day. And then at this point, so he's left alone on the ship, it's just him, he's the sole survivor.